Hey everyone, I'm Almar of almarsguides.com, and in this video here we're going to talk about the Juggernaut build in Titan Quest. So as you can see based on the screen, this is a combination of defense and earth masteries, and it is surprisingly powerful. It can be played in multiple ways. It can be played either with a throwing weapon and a shield or with a melee weapon and a shield. I'm going to be specifically showing you the melee weapon and the shield. But I will explain the differences a little bit if you would like to try a throwing weapon yourself. So let's dive in. We'll look at the skill trees, what abilities I have, why I got them, when I use them, and then we'll go through my gear and same thing for those, why I got them, etc., etc. So starting with the defense tree. Up this right-hand side here, these are your passives, and they're extremely important. Max all of them out. Basically, every build that goes into defense, you want these passives. Just max them. Concussive blow. Only if you're using a club or axe do you want anything to do with it. Otherwise, skip it. Adrenaline. I see a lot of builds skip this. I personally like it, though, because it's basically just another proc that does quite a bit. Like, as you can see here, it increases the damage, speed, and, well, physical damage, bleeding damage, and your movement speed during an adrenaline rush. This also reduces the time an adrenaline rush can trigger, and then adrenaline rush, as its default, increases your health regeneration, and it lasts longer than the recharge. So you can technically be under the effects of adrenaline 100% of the time, so long as you have this ability, resilience, that reduces the cooldown of it. Extremely useful in my opinion. I don't know why some builds skip it. Rally, this is essentially like another potion that also buffs you. When you pop Rally, you're going to get energy regeneration, as you see here, total speed that goes with it, along with the base thing of Rally, which is health restored, increased health regeneration, and armor. So health restored and increased health regeneration, it's pretty much exactly like potions are. Potions restore a flat amount of health, and then they increase your health regeneration over, or they restore a percentage of your health over, I think, like 5 seconds after using it, or maybe it's 3 seconds. And last but not least, for Rally, Defiance. This passive is insanely good. This passive right here will allow you to not cap your elemental resistances, which means you'll be able to put more or get more gear for physical or pierce or vitality or poison or bleeding. You'll be able to basically get your elemental resistances to like 40 to 45, somewhere in there, and then you can just gear out all of your other resistances, because so long as you use Rally, you'll be max resists. And I'm pretty sure Rally lasts like 18 seconds with a 38-second cooldown. So, well, 38 seconds because I have some minus recharge. But 18 seconds is a pretty long time. It's good enough to, at least 3/4 of the fight, you'll have your max resists. Otherwise, you'll be a little bit below. And during those little bit below times, you have to keep a little bit more of an eye on your health. But it's not that big of a cost. It's a fair trade-off to suffer more elemental damage and to stack pierce resist instead, or physical resist, because most of the oh shit damage you'll take is from pierce or from physical, in my honest opinion. Vitality too, and poison, of course. Forgot about those too. So, battle awareness. This is going to be the buff that you throw on yourself at all times and you keep on yourself at all times. It increases your defensive ability, your armor, your shield block chance, and the most important one is Iron Will. This gives you basically capped secondary resists. Almost all of your secondary resists will be capped. The most important one out of all of them is definitely stun, freeze, and entrapment is pretty good too. The only useful one that it does not give you is slow. Slow is very, very annoying for melee users, and sadly, that does nothing about it. Or actually, I wonder if freeze means slow. I don't think it does though. Nope. Slow down. So, next one in here is quick recovery. This essentially allows you to block more and absorb armor more, or gives your armor absorption more. So, this isn't a button that will save your life, but it is a button that will reduce the damage you're taking significantly for as long as it's up. So, I like to use quick recovery when I pull like 2 or 3 packs of mobs. Just it's something that I know I'm going, like, it's just something that makes it me less likely to take spike damage that kills me, or to take an overwhelming amount of damage. So it's to summarize, basically, it's not an oh shit button. It's just a button you hit when you have a lot of mobs on you, if that makes sense. So shield charge, I have 1 point into this as well as the passive. And this is a very, very good skill for initiating a fight. You just charge at an enemy, hit them with this, and then you can drop an eruption on yourself, fire nova, and then just go to town beating everything up with your batter. And that brings us to our next skill, batter. So this is going to be your left mouse button ability, assuming that you're not using a throwing weapon. If you're using a throwing weapon, you will not get batter at all, and you probably won't get shield charge at all either. Both of these abilities, they're really only for melee. So batter, basically, it allows you to attack multiple targets and do increased damage when you do, and it will reduce their armor and slow their attack. So it's basically just like your little, run-of-the-mill mediocre sort of left-click attack. It's one of the only things you can put on your left-click button between defense and earth mastery, unless you're going to be like more of a caster or more of a ranged weapon dealer with throwing weapons. And I wouldn't recommend being a caster with this build because it is very energy heavy and we don't have a lot of energy. So as far as the passives, armor handling, it's basically a must. Shield smash is amazing. Disable, amazing. Pulverize, amazing. Get all of these. These are one of the first things you want to max out when you can. So Colossus form, this is going to be your oh shit boss button. It allows you to basically stand toe to toe with almost any boss in the game. And it also allows you to run great distances in a very short amount of time. I like to use Colossus form for the very, very difficult bosses. Otherwise, I like to use Colossus form for skipping a lot of mobs and running across zones. I don't like to use Colossus form on regular mobs because I find it's, with how fast I'm moving in Colossus form and with mobs constantly moving around and stuff like that, I find that I like misclick more often than I actually click on them, or I misclick often enough to where I don't like using Colossus form in regular fights. And by misclick, I mean like I will click like next to a mob and then the mob will move and I'll click next to him and my character will just keep running like this back and forth and not hitting the mob because I keep not clicking on the mob. And I know that's because I'm bad, but I know other people are going to experience that too. And I'm not so bad that, it's significantly more common for me than it would be for other people. If you're somebody who can just, shift left click like this and stand in one spot when you attack, Colossus form will be much better. So it's just mostly trying to chase mobs around while you're in it. It's so fast, it's relatively annoying, but it's a small price to pay for how overpowered you are in Colossus form. So Unyielding Phalanx is the last one that I'm going to mention, well, second to last, in defense. And this ability basically is amazing. It allows you to drop a line of soldiers like this that deal a shit ton of damage and enemies can't move through them. So you can use this as offensive or defensive. So if you got a lot of enemies on you, you drop the phalanx, you run to the other side of it, they'll either have to go around it or they'll just start fighting the phalanx. What I like to do though is I like to use this ability on bosses and very large packs of enemies. If I got like 6 to 12 enemies on me or more, I'll drop the Unyielding Phalanx because they'll just beat the shit out of all the enemies and it's great and I love it. The last ability is Perfect Block. It's kind of like a get out of jail free card. You become temporarily invulnerable, but you I don't think you can attack. Well, you can attack. It's just very, 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 very slow, your attack speed. It's kind of like Stone Form. Just in Stone Form, you can attack. I don't like either of these abilities because I've just never found a situation where I actually needed to use them on this character. Maybe it's different for you. Maybe you want to invest a point into one of those. I'd recommend 1 point wonder for those abilities. Just throw 1 point into them and call it a day. So, as far as the Earth Tree, we have Earth Enchantment. This is an ability that's going to buff almost all of our fire damage and burn damage. However, this Juggernaut that I'm playing stacks mostly percent physical damage boosts. So, it's not as useful, but it still is useful because, Eruption does fire damage, Fire Nova does fire damage. We still do a significant amount of fire damage that you'll want to max this out, in my opinion. Brimstone is the better of the, you want to max Brimstone first before maxing Earth Enchantment because Brimstone gives you 30% flat physical damage and burn damage over 3 seconds, which Earth Enchantment will also boost. My Juggernaut is built around stacking flat % physical damage boosts because he's a melee Juggernaut. If I was throwing weapons, I might stack more elemental damages and do more fire damage instead. Like I said, there's multiple ways to play this character depending on what you want to do. Stone Skin. This gives you flat fire resist as well as flat armor. It's also worth mentioning, as far as I'm aware, I've read this from a few guides online, that 75 armor applies to each piece of armor that you're equipping that has an armor stat. So chest, helm, bracers, boots. As you can see, my shield has no armor stat. It has a damage stat, no armor stat, which means it won't apply to that. So just keep that in mind. It's not plus 75 armor. It's plus 75 armor per piece of armor that you have, I think. I'm not entirely sure. I can't see the code of the game, so I can't be entirely sure, but that's what I've been told and read multiple times. It also gives you flat fire resist, which means you don't have to worry about fire resist as much as your other elemental resistances. With Rally and with Stone Skin, I mean, you can run around with like 10 to 20% fire resist and you'll be just fine. Or 10 to 20% fire resist on your gear, and you'll be just fine. You'll need more than that. Like if you have 10% on all of your gear, then Stone Skin will give you what, 46%. So you're already like halfway to the cap. And then Rally will pretty much put you at the cap when you use Rally. So Volatility, most important ability in Earth. This gives you a flat physical, flat fire, flat burn damage increase. Get it, no questions asked. Max it, just get it. Don't even argue. I've seen some builds leave it out. That's wrong. Don't ever do that. Don't ever leave this ability out. Always get this ability. Stone Form and its passive, one-hit wonders. If you want to put a point in it, do it. I personally think putting points into Stone Form means you have too many buttons to hit, so I didn't bother. Heat Shield, mostly what we're using this for is the physical resistance, 15% physical resistance that it gives you. Very, 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 very useful. Summon Core Dweller, normal and epic difficulties, X1 through 3. This is a very good pet. X4 and 5 in normal and epic, he sucks. And you'll constantly be resummoning him. Legendary, he sucks. Almost the whole thing of Legendary, he just sucks. So it's up to you. If you want to get points into it early on and use him throughout normal and into epic a little bit, by all means, I do on almost every Earth character I do, even characters that aren't supposed to use pets, like a Juggernaut. I'll still use the pet up until like mid-epic, and then I just completely get rid of it because he sucks too much. So Ring of Flame and Soften Metal, I'd recommend, if you want to get this ability, put 1 point in a Ring of Flame and max out Soften Metal. Soften Metal will reduce the offensive ability of your opponents and their armor. Offensive ability means you'll take less damage, and you'll also quite a bit less damage, and you also get crit less too. And reducing their armor will reduce their defensive ability, which means you'll hit them more often and do more damage to them. However, I don't use this ability because I need my energy. This is a very, very, very energy heavy build, and I don't think you have enough energy to spare for Ring of Flame. This is just my personal opinion. So Flame Surge and the entire Flame Surge line, it's more of a caster line. You can just skip it for this character. Fire Nova, it's one of the bread and butter abilities that I like using for this build. It not only deals good damage to all enemies around you and burn damage to them, it will give them impaired aim, which reduces their ability to pew arrows at you, which is very, very good for archers. Archers for almost all builds are going to be like the hardest enemies and the most annoying enemies, especially when they gang up on you in mass. Giving them impaired aim will reduce their chances of hitting you, thus reduce their damage, thus give you more survivability. That combined with a good AoE damaging ability, it's really hard to say no to it. So Volcanic Orb, I've put 1 point into each of these. The other plus 4 points is from my plus skills. If you're going to be a melee Juggernaut, I don't recommend this. If you're going to use throwing weapons, I highly recommend it. Volcanic Orb is going to be one of your best abilities. So, more or less, depending on what type of Juggernaut you want to be, you'll either get this ability or not get it. Essentially, this is a very, very powerful AoE ability that will deal burn damage and physical damage and fire damage and also stun enemies that it hits. So it's one of your bread and butter abilities that most builds for this, most Juggernaut builds do use it. I don't, because we already have too many abilities. So Eruption, it's the next one. This, you're going to drop on the ground. There's actually a few different times you want to use Eruption. And let me start going out to enemies so we can make this a little bit more entertaining instead of me just sitting here explaining skills. So Eruption, you're going to cast on the ground you're going to cast it on the ground, basically on top of yourself when you get into a pack of enemies. So I'll show you that when we get outside. Where basically you shield charge into enemies, drop Eruption on the ground around you, and then you just wail away on them with all of your melee attacks. Essentially what the Eruption does is it just allows them to take more damage while they're in like proximity to you and while they're around you. So it's just basically just additional damage and yeah, basically additional damage. It's also a very useful ability to use on bosses when you don't have Colossal form up, because you can drop Eruption on them and then just basically run around like a chicken with your head cut off as they suffer a whole bunch of damage from your Eruption. It's also useful to do that if you don't have very good resists, because you won't be able to stand in most of the boss's attacks. So essentially, now that let me go through my gear real fast. As you can see, I got pretty good gear. I don't have gear that's highly specific to my Juggernaut. I just have random epics that I got from the orbs in Gadir, which is the Atlantis main town. There's a gambling orb you can get there, which will give you epic gear or lots of blue gear. And I basically just slapped gear on my Juggernaut that got me high enough resistances. That's really the only rhyme and reason to my gear that I have. Plus skills is very important. Resistance is obviously the most important thing, and for my Juggernaut, I stack percent physical damage increase because I'm mostly a melee Juggernaut. As you can see, I'm mostly meleeing. Even as a throwing Juggernaut, you can still stack percent damage increases if you want, but it's not going to be as useful because you're going to be focusing more on Volcanic Orb and more on Eruption than you will physical damage. However, Eruption and Volcanic Orb do deal physical damage, so it isn't entirely dumb to focus on percent physical damage even if you are a throwing Juggernaut. It is still a very viable way of actually playing. So back to my gear. Plus skills, I'd recommend getting at least +3 or +4 skills. +4 will allow you to give you the max skills you can possibly get, because you can only go 4 over max. So I would recommend definitely at least +4 skills. And that's true for almost every build, every class. So other than that, that's really it. All you need to do is high enough dexterity so you can wear Stonebinder cuffs, which is my personal benchmark that I always use. And the rest goes into your strength, basically. You can dump a little bit into health to give yourself a little bit more survivability. I'd recommend having 5,500 health plus when you're on Legendary. Like by the time you get to Act 4, Act 5, 5,500 health is ideal. And it's up to you if you want to dump any in the energy, although I wouldn't really recommend it because you can just use energy potions. However, we are a very, very, very energy intensive build. We're going to be using a lot of energy potions and a lot of health potions. So as for the gameplay, let's go through this a little bit. I'll show you me killing some enemies. So as you can see, we'll drop Eruption on the ground, and then we'll pop Fire Nova, and that's our opener for the fight. And actually, if you do nothing besides just pop Eruption on the ground and hit them with Fire Nova, they will typically end up dead. Like, let me show you, and let me find another pack of enemies, and we'll just see what Eruption and Fire Nova does to them, so you can see how much damage these do. And this, too, is worth mentioning that I don't have any flat elemental damage increases. So the damage you're seeing from my Eruption and my Flame Nova is, the benefit is all, like, physical or fire. Or what's dealing the most damage is probably the physical elements of it. But as you can see, my Eruption and my Fire Nova killed all of those wolves. I didn't even attack them with melee. It was just all the Eruption and Fire Nova. I can find more wolves in here that I can show you. Come on, wolfies. So we'll drop Eruption, Fire Nova, and then I'll take my hands off the keyboard. They all did. That's how powerful our Eruption and Fire Nova is. And that's also why we want to pull enemies and drop the Eruption and Fire Nova on top of ourselves and then just start wailing on them with Batter. So it's just, that is more or less the bread and butter of this build and the way that I play it. We just use pull enemies, drop Eruption on them. Sorry, there was a cave up here I missed. Pull enemies, drop Eruption on them, Fire Nova, and then just punch everything in the face. Sometimes enemies will survive, like these Elk Lords. They probably have a shit ton of health, so they're going to survive my Eruption and my Fire Nova. But that's fine. We'll just punch them in the face with our carrot. And yes, my weapon is a carrot. It's lovely. I found it the other day, and, and I thought it was too fun to not use. It has good life leech on it too, which if you had to choose another stat to worry about, life leech and attack damage converted to health aren't bad choices for this build. Energy regeneration is very important too, and any boost to energy you can find. However, since we're mostly a strength and dexterity character, it's going to be hard to find good energy boosting gear, considering our the gear we currently, or the gear that we specialize in, isn't really for casters. And then we'll rally instead of health potion in there. Because I always forget to use rally because I'm not used to playing a defense character. I want to show you this boss up here. My bleed resist, 28. We can still do it. I know I can kill this boss even though my resists aren't very high because I have Colossus form up. So I will show you the complete silly power of Colossus form. We're also going to use quick recovery for the boss too. Just so we take reduced damage and block more of his attacks. And I don't want you to lead me into the boss just yet. Okay, so you're still alive too. Onto this boss. We're going to drop Unyielding Phalanx. So as you can see, we're just eating the boss. The Unyielding Phalanx did a shit ton of damage to him. As you can see, it's much less damage now that I don't have that up anymore. However, the Colossus form basically made me invulnerable against the boss, and he just stood no chance against me. I could just tank and spank him, no matter what. And I forgot to use my heat shield like I always do.
How dare you!
This is not one of those builds if you're really, really bad like me at remembering to always use short duration buffs. This is definitely probably not one of those builds for you. And this is one of those examples of you might have to kite around an eruption on the ground for a little bit for enemies that are extra beefy. So as far as gearing goes for the Juggernaut, what you want is to max your resist. And that is, I mean, there's a lot of other, like, max resist and as much plus skills as you can get, I guess, is the best way to put it. It's up to you if you want to go physical damage increase or if you want to do elemental damage increase. It depends on how you're going to play your Juggernaut. Throwing, you'll definitely want to do more elemental damage. You won't be doing as much physical, but if you're playing a melee Juggernaut, you're definitely going to be dealing a lot of physical damage. So I'd recommend stacking as much plus flat bonus to physical damage that you possibly can, which is exactly what I'm doing.
I would guess Ilva is being held in a dungeon.
We'll go out and kill a few more mobs because there's a few more things I want to show you, but I've shown you most of the quirks of this build thus far. If you notice too, if you watch my mana bar when I start a fight, almost every single fight I have to drink a mana potion. The initial eruption and fire nova usually leaves me out of mana. Fire nova, eruption, and then the batter, and as you can see I'm sitting at like 300 energy right now. So I would say it's definitely not a noob friendly / farming friendly build, because it requires the amount of potions it requires is probably more than you'll make from the drops that you get, unless you're picking up like every little thing, and in which case it's like, why? So keep that in mind when you're looking at this build and when you're thinking about builds to play. Lead those enemies in my phalanx and just let the phalanx handle that. As you can see though, this build is it's quite good. Like your survivability is pretty darn good. Your damage is pretty darn good. I'm very pleased with the amount of damage that this character does. It's not like you know, I'm just tanky through the roof and I deal almost no damage. And it's also not like I'm a glass cannon and I can't take any hits. So it's a very, very nice mix of tanking, of survivability and damage that it can deal. So overall, I am very, very, very pleased with this build. I went into it expecting it to completely suck, and I was blown away at how efficient the build actually handled and how fun it was. It does come with some obvious downsides though, like the energy cost of it is just through the roof. So that's definitely a big downside. It is gear dependent because it's a melee build. You're gonna need resistances or you're gonna die. So that's very important as well. We're just going to Colossus form and beat up this Restless King. And yeah, that's basically all there is to it. I'll end the video here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something. There's more information about the Juggernaut and a bunch of other builds on my website, almarsguides.com. If you guys would like more information or you would like to see a text-based version of this guide, just check out my website. It's also in the description of this video. I'll see you guys around in the next video. Peace.